Welcome to the Conflict Defense Studio. I'm incredibly excited to be here this morning. So, as many of you know, the Conflict Defense podcast and the larger mission of Conflict Defense is help 1,000 technology and security leaders build and lead effective evidence-based security programs. And that evidence-based is the most critical thing at a time when there's a lot of talk and a lot of news and a lot of artifacts. It's really hard to center ourselves in a center of truth, in the center of facts. And so building an evidence-based security program is the mechanism by which we as leaders move into the sense of confidence that the world is not always on fire, but there is actually solid ground that we're building on. So that is evidence-based security programs. Now, the whole point of doing this podcast is I really wanted to highlight the science of security, because on the podcast, which comes out on a weekly basis and we're just relaunching here, is we're getting the very best in security together so that we can talk about the science of security and the art of human relationships and therefore influence. So I'm really excited about this. So we're trying something new as we're getting into the new year here, which is going live every morning. So every day about 8:30, I'll be here in the studio going live with you, sharing a key concept or key technique that is emerging in these conversations that I'm having with these world-class performers on the podcast. And so as we're having these conversations about security design, security architecture, influencing an organization to help drive maturity throughout, that's going to show up here in these 15, 20-minute conversational bites that we're going to have live streaming here on LinkedIn and YouTube. So if you are tuning in for the first time, welcome. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. Again, we're coming out of the Conflict Defense Studio because we've got a really cool insight I want to share with you today. So the thing for today that I want you to start that I have learned over the past couple of years and has been reiterated to me by other smart, good thinking people is that one of the problems that you have as a security leader is you don't have a single security program. People say, wait, what do you mean, Connor? I work for one company. I have my one team and we do this one thing. And of course I have one program. But actually what I'm going to posit to you today is that one of the reasons why it is so hard to answer the question, how are you doing in security? Do you have enough funding in security? How are things going? How mature is our program? They're so hard to answer because we actually have a fractional relationship inside our programs. So bear with me, and in 2 minutes, I will show you a visual that'll help anchor this. But the key idea here is that you don't have one program, you have 3 programs for every business unit. And it is the core, when all those bits come together, that is your overall security program. And this is what makes it so hard to measure when you're trying to measure just the top line of how's the overall program doing. Actually, you have 3 domains inside every business unit. So the key idea is derived from Conway's Law. Conway's Law is a principle or an adage that states that an organization's their design system reflects their own communication structure. So when you think about the modern cloud security company today, modern cloud company today, cloud native company, what really starts to show up is that there are 3 distinct domains that are necessary for the modern company to exist. And no matter how big or small your company is, if you are a cloud native company, this is a pattern that's going to emerge there. The only difference is if you have multiple business units, this will show up multiple times. So let me show you what I'm talking about. And again, this is really derived principally from Conway's Law, which is the communication structures of an organization leads to hard boundaries. And as such, therefore, things mirror that. And one of the things that's emerging out of that is that these security programs are also emerging out of that as well. So this is why, again, it is so difficult to say, how is security? How mature is our security program? It's because you have 3, not 1. So let me just bring up a visual aid here. Okay, so the key idea here, so there we go. Let's do this. Let me get you to that 3 and 1 in just a second. But I want to remind everyone, this is how I orient my programs. And if you're tuning in for the first time, you'll see that there's a really simple way here of communicating the effectiveness and purpose of your security program if you find yourself leading a security program for a modern cloud native company. So obviously, first things we want to move fast and safer. So we want teams to ship code and ship infrastructure, and then we'll go faster. Awesome, but let's make it safer. Let's let the car go super fast, but we're going to make sure it's got airbags, it's got seat belts, it's got automatic braking systems. It'll give you a heads up display when you're about to run into a tree. Those type of things, right? Those car safety features, I kind of extend that analogy into the security program. We want people to drive fast. We want people to drive safely as well. So the second thing is we also want to be able to detect attacks and shut them down quickly. This is really important because if you just get centered on vulnerability management or good security architecture, or just like, hey, if I can just build the castle walls high enough, hey, if I can do all these things, like there is actually an adversary out there who is actively trying to break into your environment. So you do need to have that vigilance about you are looking for the adversary and you're shutting that down. And because they are cropping up, they are at your door. So it's like, what are you doing to recognize them and close them down early before they can metastasize, before they can become a larger issue? And the other component of this is if you touch customer data, you've got privacy legislation, and that's the bare minimum. I mean, if you're, obviously if you're credit cards, you got PCI. If you have customers in the state of California or the state of New York or soon to be Virginia and Colorado and others, you have consumer privacy laws you have to think around. And then the compliance only goes up when you're in healthcare or federally regulated spaces. So there is a component of your program, which is an actual huge value driver, making sure that you are meeting and achieving your compliance standards. So I bring these three up because if you think about the intent here of our security program is to make things, let the end companies go faster and safer, detect and respond to attacks, and then we want to achieve and meet our compliance. If that was it, you would think there would be a single measurement for how are we doing on a scale of 1 to 5? How are we doing in a CMMI maturity curve? How are we doing against this benchmark? But this is where it gets tricky, and this is where the real meat of this comes into it. So again, remember what I said, Conway's Law? Conway's Law is that you have an organization, saying the organizational design system mirrors its own communication structure. So how have you organized your teams is how you should be thinking about organizing your security program. So this is a very simple, just 3x3 matrices. So you see on the left-hand side here, those are the three principles that we're trying to drive through with the security program. Move faster and safer. What's your vulnerability management? What's your security architecture? How do you release code safely into the environment? The infrastructure, the Docker containers, are they meeting baselines? Are they meeting expectations? Whatever, right? What is it that you're shipping to market? And how do you let people release those features safer and faster? The second component, of course, is detecting attacks and shutting them down. What is your incident response, your detection response? What is your security operations center? How are they functioning in these areas? And then your compliance, SOC 2, PCI, CCPA, whatever, right? You know what's in that bucket, and you want to make sure they're there. Now, those are important. Those are the key pillars and functions of a security program. But how they are manifest in these different areas is completely different. And this is the important thing. This is why it is so difficult to answer the question, how are we doing on security? How mature are we? Is because if you try and put a number with one of these three things, it quickly gets out of skew. Because how you do it in the product engineering, how you do vulnerability management and product engineering is so completely different than how you do vulnerability management in your corporate environment. So let me walk you through these three. You've got product engineering. You're a cloud native company. You've got a marketplace. You've got a site. You've got an app. You do a thing that ships code to the world and your company makes money. Awesome. How you do that is one domain. Think about it. All the people in that bubble are talking to each other. All the people in that bubble have to work together to get that thing released, get that feature released, get that code shipped, get that experiment tested on the website, understand that customer interaction. They're in this particular bubble. And they don't necessarily need to talk to your cloud infrastructure folks. There's a bridge there, right? There's a reason they're next to each other on the map here, but they are actually distinct. How your engineering operations team works, how your SRE team works, how they're really diving in and making sure that the infrastructure layer of cloud across the way is there to support the engineers who are writing the software. They're a separate boundary into themselves. And also think about it, like vulnerability management in product security, you're trying to get people to like update libraries and remove secrets from code. In the cloud stack, like you don't want secrets in code, but like you do it a completely different way, right? You're really worried about like our S3 buckets going public, our RDS database is encrypted. Do you have overly permissioned IAM roles? So again, it's security architecture, vulnerability management, right? Same problem sets, but the expression of those are very different. And how you'd measure maturity and effectiveness is also very different. And then you take another leap over is corporate technology, your IT security. How are they showing up? Now, how you patch your Mac is completely separate than how you update your libraries in the code that you're releasing, right? So I hope you're kind of following along here that you may have these key things that your company is your security program is trying to bring to the company and bring to life. How they are manifest, how they are expressed are very different. So therefore, how they are measured and the effectiveness of that is going to be very different between all three of these. Cool. So the driving principle here is around Conway's Law. The key takeaway here is that you don't have one security program, you have three. And if you have multiple business units where there's, again, a hard boundary around them, not an embedded one, you've got someone in Europe and you've got the US team and they kind of like do their own things, right? They're going to be separate. If they're all shared and again, going back and the communication flows there and everyone's just an extension of those teams, then you may not need to replicate this. But if you do have separate business units there and there is a hard boundary between those two, then this will just replicate out again and again. So you've got these three different domains: product security or AppSec, your infrastructure security or CloudSec, and your corporate security, your IT security components. Again, and then they'll run across, and how you express the core parts of that mission is going to be different. And you may then say, great, now what? How do I say how good I'm doing with vulnerability management? Well, it's actually quite simple. You say our AppSec, our vulnerability management, and you get a grid here, and you can say, it's here we are on the maturity scale. Here's whatever the framework you're using to understand where you are in that journey can be represented inside this grid. You can even take it one step further and then have a heat map. Oh, look, we're really bad at detection and response in corporate security, or more likely, or we're really good at vulnerability management in app engineering security, or vice versa, right? You can start to say, where do you want to focus your time and attention? Because this is where you're the least mature. So another key thing here is, again, it's all around communication structures. So your maturity is directly related to the maturity of your program, and these areas is directly related to the health of your communication structures. What are the operating routines that allows information to flow between these? Like if you've got really healthy relationships with a particular domain, guess what? That inevitably will become the strongest part of your security program. So you need to watch out for that, because while that is great, what are the other pieces that are atrophying? Where do you need it? So you might need to take some deliberate time to really nurture and mature and create ways for information to flow between those different areas. Cool. So I wanted to leave you guys with that. There's that key concept here that you don't have one security program, you got three at least, right? Three is a unit, and that can replicate out depending on business units. In that, according to Conway's Law, we're organizing based around how we communicate. And so when you find there is a weakness or an immaturity or one sector that's not doing well, the word I use is domain. You have the product domain, the cloud domain, cloud infrastructure domain, and the IT security domain. When one of those domains is in the red, before you start investing in technology, before you start investing in anything else, just pause, step back, and say, how is my communication? How's my working relationship with the decision makers in that area? Do we have a cross stand-ups that we attend? Do we have a Slack room or whatever that's set up for information flow? Do we have the ability to every couple of weeks have a happy hour together? Whatever is the appropriate mechanism inside your organization, follow that and see, like, is that being neglected in that domain? And I bet you'll find something really important there. And once you heal that and you move that to a state of health, then all your other initiatives, they'll just naturally work better, right? It's oil in the engine, as it were. But I would actually say it's not the oil in the engine. I'll take that back. It is the plumbing. It is the engine by which the work gets done, is the communication structures in place. Cool. So that's what I want to share with you guys. Like I said, we're kicking off something new and fun here. Every day, we're going to go live with some of the key concepts and structures that I'm learning in the conversations I'm having over there on the podcast. So if you are interested in these incredible conversations, we've had 40 episodes already released. Go check them out. Apple, Google, whatever it is you get your podcasts, will be there. And again, we love engaging here on LinkedIn as well. So feel free to give me a follow and or the Confident Fence site as well. And I look forward to seeing you there. Cool. Until tomorrow, be well and stay safe.